Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the HR Leaders Podcast, the show where we explore the future of work with industry experts and HR executives in the world leading global brands. Today, we're joined by Karoline Raets, who's the Chief HR Officer of Itiviti. Welcome to the show, Karoline. How are you?
I'm good, thanks, Chris. How are you?
I'm good. First and foremost, you're in an office.
I am. Isn't that amazing? I'm amazed myself.
I've seen in an office in the last 3 months. It took me a few seconds to be like, Caroline in an office, or is that a green screen of an office?
It's a real office.
Before we jump in, how are you?
I'm really good. I'm happy to be in the office, doing well.
Yeah, I'm sure everyone's thinking, how is it? How long you been back for?
So we reopened our Paris office on May 25th. So I came in on May 26th to check how things were going, and then so I've been in and out. But as time moves on, we see more and more people eager to come back.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going well.
What's been the what was the impetus behind what did the conversation look like between you and the executive team of deciding how, when to return?
Yeah, so we've got 17 locations globally, so it's kind of a bit of a task to stay abreast of what are the local governments giving as guidelines and recommendations to be able to return back to the office. So it's really staging, and it really depends from region to region. So I think across Itiviti, the only office that never really closed was Hong Kong, which is interesting.
Yeah.
So that we always had like 5 to 10 people in the office in Hong Kong, but then the rest of the offices worldwide really shut down totally. And then a couple of weeks ago, when the French government announced that starting May 18th, they were going to reopen businesses and schools, even though it wasn't like full time. We started thinking, okay, what does this mean? And so we had in Paris, we have a works council. And so I had a meeting with the works council, and we started talking about, maybe we should put like June 2nd as a date to return. Schools are partially reopening. So maybe we should ask employees who is ready and willing and feels comfortable coming back to the workplace. And so we set that June 2nd date, and then the Works Council said, well, you know what? I think some people are really eager to come back faster. I thought they were going to say, push it back. And they were like, no, could we move it forward? So we then decided that, well, why don't we do a test group? Because you do have to reorganize things in the office. We can't bring in the entire workforce. And by the way, that not everybody would want to come back immediately anyways. So what we did is we decided that we would go with May 25th as sort of the first week with a test group of around 5-6 people. And then we sent out a message to the staff in Paris. Usually we're about 115 people in the office, and ask them, okay, we're going to reopen the office officially June 2nd, test group May 25th. If you want to return, if you feel comfortable, if you can, given your personal...
Yeah, so you said to people, it's up to you.
It's up to you if you want to. We're not pushing anybody. We did say from the start, when we started communicating about reopening the office, it is our expectation to return to the office fully September 1st. It's sort of like back to school, back to the office. And so we did a test group the first week. We had a prep meeting with them where we explained to the people who had said, I want to return, like, these are the rules. This is what happens with regards to the kitchen area, with regards to the toilets, with regards to, lunches and all of that, the social distancing, everything. Made sure that everybody had their mask, the little packs with sanitizer and everything. And so first week we had 5-6 people. The second week, double. Now we're the third week in, and I think there's close to 20 people in the office now. And it's interesting because the people that come in, you can feel their relief to be back in the work office environment. And so they start talking to their colleagues over Zoom meetings, which we've been doing for the last 3 months now. We've seen our huge increase in usage of Zoom. and they're like talking to each other, saying, I mean, people are surprised. Oh, you went back to the office? Yeah, I'm back. What's it like? Actually, it's pretty cool. It's nice. So it's safe. And so the next day we see more people asking, like,
Uh,
I want to return too.
slowly
So I
but
think
surely.
it's the word spreading. And then the next office that we're going to open is this week is Italy, Milan, which
Okay.
is a much smaller office, but the constraints there are different. For example, in Paris, you don't have to take people's temperature. In Milan, you do. Well, actually, you had to in May, but as of June, it's no longer necessary. So
It's hard. It
things
must be hard to
change.
keep up. I know I was about to say it must be really hard. How you manage to keep up to date for every country? There's different rules, regulations, what you can do, what you can't do, and it's changing daily.
Yeah, so
As well.
it's true, and it was sort of like, we've never been through this before, so you're kind of, learning as you go, and learning from your mistakes, and sometimes you're really happy when you've been proactive about something. So what we did is we build a Google spreadsheet which we share with all the local people partners. We kind of outlined, for each office, what are the things that need to happen, what are the governments announcing, when can we open, and we just have a whole spreadsheet with follow-up, which the local people partners update. And then we also have a weekly COVID-19 call with the entire people office, where we share, this is what's happening, this is what we're doing from a corporate perspective. And then I ask each country, like, give us a really quick update of what has changed compared to last week, anything that, and we just share best practices and ideas on, what works and what doesn't.
Yeah.
And
Because that must affect the whether people, because you said before the call, some countries you have to wear a mask in the office.
yes,
And at that point, am I really going to want to come and work in the office if I have to wear a mask all the way
yeah,
around? Or do I rather just be at home?
exactly. No, there are some countries like in Romania or in Russia where to be compliant, you got to wear your mask the whole day. So, people are a bit more reluctant to come into work and wear that mask a whole day because it's really no fun.
Yeah.
So
They're
yeah,
happy or bad at that point. you can't tell.
exactly.
As well. Well, I know we've kind of been going a bit off topic. For everyone listening on LinkedIn, we are going to jump into Caroline's journey and experience into becoming a CHRO, which is a very unique one. But I thought it would be good to spend a few minutes on this because there's not many people that I've actually spoken to that are returning to work. So it's great to hear your insights. How did you manage the communication throughout this? Did you how often did you communicate? Did you do surveys? What type of questions were you asking employees?
Yes. So I think so. We went in full lockdown almost across the globe between beginning and mid-March. And it was actually pretty easy to, go in lockdown, to tell people, because we're a technology company, so we're very well equipped to be able to tell people you can work from home. So we've got Slack, we've got Zoom, so that worked really smoothly. And then we've done like bi-weekly sort of COVID-19 update newsletters about what's going on, and making sure that we kind of covered what was happening globally, because people work with other people in other countries. So if you just keep it to one country, they don't know what's happening elsewhere. So they were really interested in understanding, if I call St. Petersburg, are they still going to be in the office, or are they from home now? What's happening when? So I think it was a very regular communication. And then what we also did was, I think, 1 or 2 weeks into the lockdown, we did an engagement survey, just to see, how people are living through this period. And it was really interesting to see that our engagement actually jumped up quite significantly across the globe, and that some of the areas where in the past we were not doing so well, like collaboration, communication, we peaked. People were like saying, that we had so much improved. So I was like, at least, it's brought us some lessons to learn. And it's true that we've done, for example, we organized with our CEO during, I think, 3, 4 weeks, 5 weeks in a row. We had 3 times per week a 1-hour session at lunch, which we called Food for Thought. And so we would invite 15 to 20 people from across departments and across regions. So it was like breakfast in America, it was dinner in Asia, and it was lunch in Europe. And we would just talk, he would just talk about, this is how the business is doing, and we would ask questions, we would let people talk about their experience. So it really opened up, and we have a pretty flat organization, but it really flattened it out much more. And people actually asked, like, could we continue this afterwards? Because getting access is like, this is really great. And then we had executive team leaders, members joining in, randomly, and like talking about what's happening in their area. So that was really nice. And then at the back of the engagement survey, we had a lot of comments around, could we extend, the flexible work from home after this pandemic? And so we thought, okay, let's ask what it is they really are looking for. So we send a very simple Google spreadsheet survey out where we asked people, are you interested, yes or no, to do more work from home? And if so, in what form? And the feedback was like 90% said yes. And yeah, they want to work from home more. And it's about between 3 and 5 days per week, so to full time, is close to like 40% of staff that would be interested. So what we're doing now is we prepared a global work from home policy, and we're now working on the local ones because some of the rules and regulations may change in country.
Sure.
But definitely next step is come back to the office by September 1st. Yeah. And then we will start to collect the requests for people to, work from home more. So it's totally changing how we're going to work in the future, which will require us also to make some changes and probably trainings for managers, because managing remotely is not the same as managing when, people are sitting next to you.
Exactly. That's something I've been trying to talk a lot about recently. Many managers and leaders aren't prepared. I wasn't prepared. Leading a team remotely is very different. A different set of skills, and technology as well comes into play. Could you share with everyone, because you shared a few things with me before, which were pretty cool, of some of the things you've implemented in the office, just simple things to aid with the return to the office?
Yeah, so we've got sanitizers all over. We've got in front of the meeting rooms, they have a sign outside that says how many people can be in that meeting room maximum. So now that we've got more people coming back, we need to start policing, because it says 4 and then there's 5.
How are you going to police it though? Like, is it literally like, is there people like nominated, or we're going to trust people enough to self-police? Like, that's something I've always been interested in. Like, how do you think that's going to play out?
I think up until now, people are still, they're not totally like relaxed about the whole situation. So they're still pretty cautious, and they're kind of policing it. Policing is a big word, but they're kind of watching each other. Yeah. And I can hear, like, we're in open space across the floor, people will be like, yeah, you're standing too close. So it's fun, but at the same time, it's, people do take it serious. We kind of put arrows around how you walk around the office, so that it's just one direction and that people don't cross each other. We've got a coffee machine in the kitchen here that you can actually now order your coffee from your phone. So there's an app, so you can order your coffee. You could actually order coffee now for your colleagues if you want to.
That's nice. You just go and go get it whenever you order it. Go there, grab it.
Your coffee's ready.
That's nice.
And then also, for example, in the toilets, there can only be one person at a time. So we stuck this thing on the door. It is like red or green to show whether there's already someone in there or not. So it's all those little things. That we've implemented.
And we can see only time's going to tell how this is going to really play out, right? It's only been a few weeks for you now?
It's been 3 weeks, and now the French government has announced, normally starting July 10th, they will no longer be in this emergency state. So that could further loosen up the rules and would actually probably trigger more people to wanting to return to the office.
Wow. Well, thanks for sharing. Any other learnings on that point? You said you've done some other surveys and questions. Any other questions that you asked?
No, I think I think what's been really important is to listen to what is important for employees. What do they feel most comfortable with?
Yeah, and then
Uh,
go from there. Because I love the fact that it's so important to be like, come back when you're comfortable, as opposed to you have to come back. And
yeah.
then the more they hear from colleagues that are in the office, like you're saying, you're going to
Mm,
slowly they're going to feel more comfortable to return. I think that's definitely the best approach at
yeah.
this time for everyone.
It's
Because I
come back
know,
when you're comfortable, but at the same time, we do
yeah, of
expect
course.
you to be back on September 1st.
Yeah, my wife's similar. It's actually September seems to be like most people I'm speaking to, most of their companies are saying September. That seems to be the date I
Yeah.
keep hearing over and over again.
Unless,
But
something goes wrong,
yes,
a
of
second
course,
wave or whatever, but if all
yeah,
goes well, back to the office, back to school.
yeah.
Mm,
I'm just interested to see how it's going to play out when we've proven that it can work now.
mm,
In terms of working from home, like there's many companies out there that have been saying for years this won't work. We have to
mm,
be in the office. And I'm interested to see when they do return in September, how they handle that, because employees are going to say, well, it did work, right? Why can't I work from home full
mm.
time? Because it worked for me, my family, for everything else, right? It just made sense. So it's going to be very interesting to see how it all plays out.
Yeah. And I think it is again a conversation that we've had internally as well to understand, do we what framework do we put around it? Do we expect people to be with a company for a certain amount of time where you are sure that from a performance and knowledge and autonomy perspective, they are in a position to actually be able to work from home. And of course, if we're talking 1 or 2 days a week, it should be fine. But when you're talking about full time, I the person who comes in the organization first job, full time from home is not going to fly. So we are putting a
Mhm.
framework around it.
Yeah. No, I think that's important because that's something a lot of leaders a lot of CHROs I've speaking to is how do you, when you're onboarding people in this environment, how do you then
Mm,
build, how do they become part of your culture? How do you build culture remotely?
yeah.
What does that look like? And if I'm
Mm,
new and I've just come out of school or I'm joining my first role and I'm immediately at home, it's going to be very difficult. So maybe it could be a mixture of coming into the office for the first few months, meeting a
exactly.
team, building rapport,
Mm,
and that way, and then slowly transitioning.
yeah.
I think that would make sense.
Mm,
Where obviously, with this global talent marketplace, it's not always going to be possible because obviously you want to be able to tap into talent around the world without them having to be in the office.
mm.
But I think it's going to be a mixture, right?
No,
Um,
exactly.
as well. But let's go back to the beginning. So thanks
Yes.
for sharing that. As I was picking on you now because I just told you opposite of it. Tell me more. um, tell everyone because you didn't start in HR, right? So tell everyone that story, sort of your journey to where we are now.
Yeah, so I'm originally from Belgium, so that's where I grew up, where I lived until I was 24, and I studied marketing and communications, and when I graduated, it was more oriented around communications, and there wasn't really jobs in communication at that time. So natural thing, I stepped into sales. So I actually spent the first 17 years of my career on the business side. So I was in sales. That was my first job, and then in '93 I moved to Paris from Belgium. And I think I've gone through like all levels in an organization. I started as a receptionist, so I have a lot of respect for receptionists
Yeah.
because it's a tough job. I've done telemarketing, and then I managed to get a job in communications, public relations, press relations. Stayed with that company in Paris for about 5 years. And then I took a sabbatical and I went traveling for a year in Latin America. I came back, or in '99, and I then worked my first job in the fintech industry. So, and haven't left it since. So it's been in there for more than 20 years now. And so that company was a French based technology company. They developed trading software for the financial industry. And they had 6 offices and 300 people when I joined them. And about 8, 9 years later, we sold that company to SunGard, which is a huge, now
Yeah.
FIS, a
Hmm.
huge fintech player. And by the time we sold them, we were 1,500 people, 26 offices worldwide. So it had exponentially grown. And so I spent most of my career, around 13 years, on the sort of glamour and glitter side of marketing and communications, internal, external, investor relations. So the very broad
Sure.
range. And then in 2007, I had my first child, and I remember I came back from maternity leave, and the CEO calls me and says, "Oh, Kara, we should meet and have lunch and talk about your future." I remember I
Well,
said,
oh my God.
"Husband, I'm fired.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, oh no.
This is it." And he was like, my husband said, "I don't think he would invite you for lunch
Yeah,
if he wanted
exactly.
to fire you." I'm like,
Yeah,
"Oh, maybe that's
exactly.
true."
But that's
And
the first
so
call. We always think negatively, don't we? We're always like, oh no.
yeah, the worst is going to happen. And so I had lunch and with him, and so he was saying, "Yeah, I think it's time for you to move on and do something new." And I was like, "Oh well, yeah, why not?" Because I kind of done everything I wanted to do, unless he put an extra million on the table to have to play with. And so, but I didn't really know what. And I told him, I said, "I don't want to go back to sales. I don't want to do customer services. I don't want to do professional services. I don't want to do admin." So, and he said, "I think I know what you would be really good at." And so he said, what about you taking on, chief HR for the company?" I think was like text Avery, my mouth like fell open. I was like, "What?"
Like, what?
Why would I want to go on to the dark side?
Of
uh,
what it
and
seems. Yeah.
and so, because for me back then, like, HR was, it's a back office,
Front end.
function, and I'd been out there doing marketing and communication, so it was such the opposite. And so he said, "Well, think about it." He said, I would like you to turn the back office HR function into a front office function with added value. And, everybody in the organization, the organization well, its products and everything. So he said, "I think you do a great job." And my first reaction was like, I have no background whatsoever. There's the entire legal side to it that like scared the hell out of me. And he said, "Well, you've got a team, so rely on your team. If they're good, they will help you." And so I did some research, and it's back in those days was sort of the beginning of HR leaders coming from the business side. So I thought, why
Yes.
not? What do I have to lose? So I accepted, and I have to admit that it wasn't easy.
No, of course. And that's why I want to have you on the show to talk about that, because there's so many other leaders now that are crossing over. That's very common now. When you were
Yeah,
doing it, maybe a few outliers, but now it's very, very common for other
back
business leaders from sales, marketing, other functions stepping into the CHRO, CPO role.
yeah.
Wow. So, uh,
So, but and then I mean, from there on, so we that this is 2007, and then the we so I ran the HR team. I think what helped is that I'm a very collaborative leader, with a participative style. So for me, it was I was and very open. So I told them, "Listen, I don't know anything about the legal side. I don't know anything about payroll. I have no clue how you recruit. Um, but if I've got some ideas, we can work together. We can start thinking about performance management, talent management, identifying who are the key people in the organization." And I kind of put myself in the seat of me being the employee in the past. What was it that I felt was missing that I now wanted to sort of implement? And although it was tough, it worked out well, and I quite quickly started to create a real passion for it. And I remember asking my CEO, "Could I get a coach like who could tell me, when I do things right or wrong and what I should be focusing on?" And he said, "You know what, Caroline, why don't you do the job for 6 months? and then you will know what you're good at and what you need to improve, and then we can take a coach. So you can imagine I never got the coach because 6 months in he was like, oh, you're doing okay. But he helped me. He was my
was the
mentor.
coach. Yeah. It sounds like. What was the reaction from your HR team when they found out you got the role? This person's coming in, never done a day of HR before. What
It
was?
was I think it was mixed. Those who I had good interactions with in the past, who were quite excited to have me come in and take this over, and really supporting me in the journey. And then there were others where it took a little longer to, those who challenge you, like, oh, would you fix this? Like, show me how you're going to do this.
Yeah, because they
Where
know you may not have the answer.
I don't have the answer. And I swear I've had situations where my phone would ring. I would sit in my office and my phone would ring and I pick up, and then I would have this employee relations issue that was explained to me, and I'd be sitting there taking notes, and I would go like, okay, I got it. I'll be back. And then I would hang up and I would run into the office of the legal person like, what do I do? What can I do? What can I not do? Because I think that was sort of what was the toughest for me when I took on this job, is understanding sort of where you put your company or employees or your team at risk, and when do you not put them at risk, is like getting like the right reflexes, was what probably kept me awake
Yeah,
most.
but by the sounds of it, is part of your success has been in your vulnerability.
Oh
Is
yeah,
is by not coming in and claiming you have the answers, is by not trying to proclaim that you have the solutions, instead actually relying on the expertise and knowledge of a team, because that's what great leaders do.
Yeah.
As well, and then you're empowering your team. They're probably really excited about it now. I'm sure they came to you with so many ideas that
they
they've
did.
been thinking about for so long. Like, actually, maybe Caroline's open to hearing all these great ideas we have now, because she understands the business and how we can then have impact.
Yeah, and they did step up quite seriously. So that was really nice. And it was also impressive for me back then, because we're talking 13 years ago, where
Oh,
all of a
13 years ago.
sudden,
Wow.
yeah,
Okay.
you're being projected into an executive committee, um, at that level with no experience at all, and you have your seat at the table.
But you do have
And
experience though, because you understand the language of the business,
I
right?
do, but then from an HR perspective, I was kind of sitting there thinking, in the beginning, every meeting I was thinking,
And ask me that
okay,
question.
what do I have to bring to the table? What should I be talking about? It was
Yeah.
it was interesting,
Yeah.
but it
Well,
was nice to have a supportive team as
well, the
well.
fact it was driven by the CEO, right? So like that alone
Exactly.
showed the value that he or she
Mm,
saw in you, and also the HR team, and what you could add to the
mm,
organization as well. So you've immediately got the buy-in,
mm.
and the relationship there, which is huge.
But
Um,
I didn't have the self-confidence.
Yeah,
So that
I've
was
often
that was
say that though. I've done over 300 episodes nearly of this podcast now, and one of the things that always comes up is fear of failure,
mm,
thinking I didn't have the skills and knowledge to do it all the time.
mm,
These are the most successful CHROs in the world. and similar for me is like people are like, what stopped you from starting this company sooner? Didn't have the confidence,
yeah.
fear of failure. Like that's just like 99% of the battle is actually believing in yourself. And
Mm,
that's where leaders and mentor and coaching comes into play. Because a lot of times we do
yeah,
have the skills, we do have the answers, but we're just afraid.
yeah.
What
The way
advice do you give to other
mm.
leaders that are listening right now, or that will be listening in the future, that are considering a career in HR? What advice would you give to them?
Um, if you really like to work with people and you're really concerned about their well-being, and making, if you want to be in an environment where it's fun to work and you want to be part of building that, uh, if you think you can build a passion around people, being a people partner, or a chief HR officer, then go for it. I mean, anything can be learned.
Yes.
It's anything can be learned, and surround yourself with the right people. Um, you know, listening. I don't know how many webinars I listened to, how many books I read, and it's true. Every time you do, I actually listened into the summit you organized a couple of days ago, a week ago. There is not one webinar you attend where you don't walk away with something new that you learned, or something you knew but forgot about. So I think it really is like, don't be afraid, just go for it. If you feel that the change is going to bring something inspirational for you, then you should
Hmm.
do it.
And that's normal. Being afraid, feeling that way, that's a good thing. So
Yes, it is.
I try and lean into that feeling now. It's like
Mm.
whenever I have that feeling of nervousness or am I going to fail? Normally, that's exactly the step that you need to take,
And
and that's
let's
where
not
the real
forget.
value comes.
And let's not forget, I mean, if you look at studies, 70% of what we learn on the job. So I can
Hmm.
tell you, I think I learned more than 70% on the job by getting this job. But it is absolutely true. That's where you learn the most.
Yeah.
So,
Well, a question we used to ask in my previous company. I don't know, I don't really ask it that much on the show anymore, but I always say to CHROs, which if you had someone with 3 years studying HR or 3 years actually being in the seat of HR, but with no
mm,
qualifications, who would you choose to be on your
mm,
team? No
mm,
brainer, right? They're going to choose the person with 3 years of experience
mm,
over the person who studied and has a degree to do it
absolutely. And
right.
I totally agree with that. I remember I had at one point, someone in the organization, talking way back now, wanted to understand what degree level the employees had, because it was very important for him to get that information. And I was thinking, if you ask me, my degree, I'm a Bachelor of Arts. So if your thing is like a
Yeah,
minimum of 5 years after finish high school, then I'm not your woman here. So
yeah,
it was, but and I was thinking exactly the same. What would you rather have, someone with 10 years of experience, or who has been studying for 10 years? And I'm not saying one isn't good over the other, but it's true that experience
mhm,
has its value,
yeah.
definitely.
I have no qualifications.
Mm,
I didn't do college or university. Just kind of went straight to work and
mhm,
learned everything I did from the age of 17 on the job. And for me, you can't buy that.
mm,
You can't do that in a course. You can't, you got to fall over on your face and make mistakes and become better each day. And I think that's the part of education which I feel is a little bit missing. You don't get those moments.
mm,
We had many people that would join my team in the past who had all of the degrees, all of the experience, but they'd never actually faced adversity before.
mm,
They've never been in a situation where they've stumbled and fell,
mm,
and that's so important. I didn't realize that
mm,
early on how important that was. If I did, actually, I would have taken more risks
mm.
earlier with my.
It's one of the things I tell people on my team when when things go wrong, when there is failure. I always say, something an ex-boss of mine told me once is, the error is the predecessor of success.
Mm,
Just learn from your mistakes, and it's okay.
yeah,
And that,
it's
yeah.
fine. It's
Mm,
something I picked up in sports. My co-founder Shane, we both grew up playing ice hockey and many sports, running, tennis. We played on every team. We were obsessed. And when you first got on the ice, you fell over a million times on your ice skates, right? You failed, you lost games, as you know, and
mm,
that was normal for me. And you had a coach, so we'd always had a coach as kids, whether it was our ice hockey coach, our tennis
yeah,
coach, whoever that would be, and you understand that you're going to be really bad at something, and
mm,
it's a process to get better, but that requires failure. So when I first came into the workplace, that was normal for me. So getting a no on my sales call and someone saying, "Chris, I'm not interested in hanging up on me," or failing at something, it was like that's fine. But I realized a lot of my peers around me that had just come out of university or college were like really upset and taking it really personal and
mm,
actually quitting the job. And I was like, this is strange. Why would they assume they'll be really good at it? first, and I didn't get it. And that's something where myself and Shane kind of excelled pretty quickly, because we understood that or at the time we had our phrase was, because it was sales, our phrase was, the more you learn, the more you earn.
Yeah.
We was in sales at the time, and we was like, really? The more I learn, the more money I make. And it was like, literally, that was a reality for us. And even with this business now, we're able to create this podcast, build our summits on those same principles.
No, and there's this saying, Mandela had this saying about, you never lose. Either you win or you learn.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's true. It's like you shouldn't be afraid to just go for it. And it's like
a lot of people know these things, all right, but then it's like they know it, but there's just still it's still difficult to, because it doesn't feel good. We avoid discomfort. We avoid it, but I think seek discomfort is really should be the focus. In your career, then, we just spoke about something which was how many years ago?
So this is 2007 is when I stepped into HR, and then in 2009 we sold the company to SunGard, which today is FIS, and that was they had a totally different setup. So we moved from being 1,500 people to 15,000. So big US organization. So my role didn't exist in their configuration. So I had a dual role for a year or two, where I was an HR business partner to a business leader who had about 600 sales people across the globe. And at the same time, at SunGard, they were looking at creating a center of excellence around talent and performance management. And so they asked me if I wanted to be part of that team to build the strategy, the structure, put together the tools, do the testing. So I was part of that group, and at the same time ran all of the talent management initiatives that we were putting in place for EMEA. So I did that for a couple of years, and then in 2012, I was appointed head of talent and performance management for SunGard globally. So that's where my focus really went into doing the pure talent management, performance management piece, with the 9-boxing and talent reviews, with the succession planning and identifying high potentials, putting 360 review programs in place. So that whole fun piece of the positive HR, which is actually nice, because in 2009, 9, when the financial crisis hit, we went through a time where we had to do quite a lot of layoffs. So moving from that side of HR into, all of a sudden, how do we retain people? How do we identify our key talent and make sure that we grow them further, develop them, and make sure that they can take key critical positions in the organization going forward, was like really, really nice and positive. And at the same time, it also had a big chunk was dedicated to performance management. So again, this was something new that I hadn't done before. And I remember when we were acquired by SunGard, back in the days, with the previous company, we were doing everything on Excel spreadsheets, so we didn't have an HR system. I thought, yes, great, we're going to be acquired by a big US corporation. We're going to have all the tools in the world, and they didn't. They were also using Excel, and so they.
Crazy to think of a company of that SunGard. That's how many employees
it's been fixed since at the time 15,000.
Oh God.
Yeah, they had different businesses. So the financial services business was 10,000, but everything was run on spreadsheets.
That's crazy.
But and so they back then they did start with looking into implementing a global HR system, which would also have like a performance management system. But unfortunately that didn't go through. So it took a very long time before they decided not to go with the vendor they had signed up for, and I think it was almost 2 years. During that time, we had a change in the CEO, and the CEO came from Aon Hewitt HR, consulting.
Yeah.
So, and I had just been appointed head of talent management and performance management, and we are in sort of June time. And I'm thinking, okay, so new CEO, he's from Aon, he's going to ask me at the end of the year, give me some statistics around, performance, bell curves, the whole thing, for the entire organization. And I was like, we're not going to be able to, I'm not going to be able to answer or give him anything, because
You
today
don't have
it's
the
like
data.
some success factors here, some
Yeah.
PDF there, nothing on another end, Word, Excel, like all over the place. So it's interesting because I built an in-house system with one developer where we took sort of the nicest version of the PDF year-end review that we found in the organization, and then we built it in-house. We rolled it out, and they ultimately used it for 3 years until they implemented fully the Workday solution.
And you built that
Um,
with one developer and you.
yeah, yeah.
Wow.
It was it
You
was
made it
it was
happen.
crazy. It was fun. It was fun, but at the same time, there was a very scary moment when I had worked with like the different business leaders to inform them that we were moving away from doing this in like variety of ways and having a harmonized way. I got everybody on board, and then I think maybe 2 weeks or something before launch, I thought maybe I should share with the CEO that we're launching this, just to avoid any surprises. So I had
So
a
get
call with
everyone on
him.
board but the CEO.
Yeah, yes,
Lesson learned.
yes.
Yeah.
So I organize a call. I present the whole system, and we had the presidents of the different businesses on the call as well, and they were like my sponsors because they were okay with the system. And so I asked the CEO at the end, so any questions? Is this okay for you? Are we good to go? And he said, well, to be honest, it looks a bit cumbersome, and I'm never going to use it. And I was like, oops. So we hung up, and I thought, oh my God, now what? So I went to one of the people in the organization that works closely with him, and I explained my case. And I'm like, how do I interpret this? And he said, well, why don't you reach out to him? So I was like, okay.
Why hadn't you reached out to him before that though?
I think I was too busy and to be honest, I was too busy and too proud that I was going to build this internally. I was so convinced, like, oh, this is great. This
Of
is
course
gonna,
everyone to be
I
on
have a
board.
solution. Who could be against this? I have a solution, and it's not costing us anything but one developer. And, I'm competing with like big systems that we're not implementing because we're, for whatever reason. But so I was like so full on focused on delivering this in time that I totally scrapped the kind of key person. So I took me a little while to phrase this email to him, that and sort of defend my case. And I remember that I wrote, I can understand that coming from an organization like Aon Hewitt, you must be, used to use very sophisticated systems, and that what I've built is maybe not as sophisticated, but it works and it's simple, and it will give us the outcome that we want for now until we move to a real professional system. And he wrote me back and he said, he said, I think you misunderstood, Caroline. He said, I'm not going to use your system just because I've never ever used an HR system in the past to do performance management. He said, so I'm just going to go in and, as usual, ask, my key questions, like what are
Oh,
the
so you
3 things
completely
that you'd think you
misinterpreted
did well, and what are the 3 things that you think you could do better. But he said, but your system is cool, is great, and it's perfect for the rest of the organization. So I was
Oh
like,
my God.
whoo.
And all of that time, how many times did you proofread that email before you sent it?
A lot. And it's when you send, sometimes when you have to send like a really important email, you kind of send and then you feel like you want to shut everything down and go to a lonely island and not see
Yeah,
if you're
and
getting a
everyone's sitting there
response.
waiting for the reply though, and then it gets
Yeah.
worse. Like 1 day, 2 days.
Yeah,
You think,
yeah, yeah.
no,
So when I saw the email, the response with his name, I was like, okay, do I open this or not?
yeah.
But it
So
was, yeah, it was a good lesson.
what are the lessons learned there then?
I think what helped though was that I really did get the buy-in from all the business leaders beforehand. And so when I did send my email to him and explain, I mentioned that I had run this by, all of the business leaders, that I have their buy-in. And so I think that even though I missed out on him, it's make sure that you get buy-in from key stakeholders that will support you if it goes wrong.
Mm-hmm. Well, and if it goes right, because then they're more likely to go right with them, right?
Yeah, no, and if it
A lot of
goes
times
right,
it's not
they're
about
your
the tool.
best sponsors.
Yeah, because most of the
Mm,
time it's not even about the technology or the tool. It's actually more the actual implementation and the
mm,
adoption and rolling it out, and people actually adopting and using the tools is,
yes.
is the difficult part, which is why it's so important to have those key stakeholders in place to help you.
No, exactly.
Champions. Interesting story, yeah. uh, just going back to a point you made earlier about working on when you went through the acquisition, you had to do quite a few layoffs. Was that your
Mhm,
first experience of doing that? And if so, for someone who's listening that perhaps is going to be in a position in the future, unfortunately, where they're going to have to let go of many of their employees,
mm,
what how did that affect you personally,
mm,
having to go through that process? Because something we don't talk about
mm,
that often, that
mm.
is going to be, everyone sees the glamorous side of HR, but there's also that side. That not many people, you don't see LinkedIn posts about that every day, about
True.
those things, right? What was your
No,
experience?
yeah, and it's also something you hardly ever talk about internally because it's
Yes.
not positive. Very often it sort of happens all of a sudden, while as HR you've been preparing it in the background. It's not, you can't talk about it until it happens. So it's a very counter-natural thing for me. Uh, and I remember back then, being new in HR, 1 year in your role in a company that was just acquired, and then they ask you to, reduce the headcount by 10% globally in an organization that had never gone through something like that before, was really tough. And it affected me personally, where I remember waking up in the middle of the night with my heart beating too fast because the next day I knew I was going to have like 3 or 4 conversations with people that I knew very well that I would have to lay off. And I think back then what probably helped me is that I had never done it before, so I didn't know really what I was walking into. um, at the same time, I think that the empathy is really important. Um, but one thing that I did learn is that you really have to stay neutral, um, and factual, but connect with the person because they're employees that you've worked with. So you can't like put on a face as like
Yeah.
sterile. I'm
Hmm.
giving you and there's no emotions is not possible. If you do it without any emotions, then maybe you should change jobs, in my view. Um, and I think the biggest thing that I learned is I remember having one conversation with someone who was really upset. And I remember saying, well, I understand. I know what you're going through. I know this is hard. Um, and the person stopped me and said, "What do you know about me?" So, what do you know about my personal life? What do you know about, what is going on with me? You can't say like, I know what you're going through. You don't. You're sitting at the other end of the table. So don't give me that crap. And I was like,
Yeah.
I really shut me down. I was like, and I apologized. I said, you're totally right. I never said that again. So never ever say that, because it's true.
Mhm.
You don't know what people's personal situation is. So that's where I think it's important to stick to the facts, but still show emotions,
Yeah.
not like you don't care.
Yeah. I remember
Mm,
when I first had to do that as well. It was all well and good wanting to be a sales manager. I can't wait. I didn't think for 1 second that part about that part of the role. I was
mm,
super excited to lead a team, to grow the sales team and overachieve. And then all of a sudden I was like, oh, this is part of this role
mm.
where I actually have to let go of people. And it was really tough.
It is.
Like especially when there's people in front of you that, their whole entire livelihoods, they've got families at home, they've got mortgages to pay, Is really. I remember going home after the first time I had to let someone go, and I just didn't sleep at all the entire night. I just couldn't stop thinking. I was like, what are they doing right now? What's that person doing right now? That person has to go home and tell their wife, their friend, their kids they don't have a job. And I know it wasn't, and I shouldn't have taken it personal because it is about the business, and it's factual and keep it. It was the right decision, but as I said, that never got easy. And you're right. If the day that gets easy for you, you shouldn't be doing that job.
No, absolutely.
It should never be easy to do that. And it's important because there's many HR leaders that are going to be going through that right now, which is the current situation.
Yeah, absolutely.
More than ever. As well. So thanks for sharing that, because not many people talk about that because it's not easy to talk about. And who do you turn?
Who do you turn to? Yeah, absolutely. And also it's in HR it's not easy when when this is coming. And so I'm a bit like you. Very often the day before, I am thinking like, okay, I know what's going to happen to this person tomorrow. And I think about, they're probably having, dinner with the family and all is good. And tomorrow I'm going to have to announce something that's going to turn their world upside down. And that's not easy. And I think it's really important as well because, if COVID-19 is an exceptional situation, but oftentimes people are also being exited because of underperformance, and underperformance is there very often also because management hasn't been at the level it should be to address it early on and make a point that not getting to the stage where it becomes a problem. And it's all about how do you manage, and it's hard because it's difficult conversations usually when you have to tell people what you're doing is not good enough or it's not up to my expectations. But when you feel something is going off track, you got to go with your gut and you got to have that honest conversation and find a way to make it constructive and saying, I got to tell you something that I'm expecting but I'm not getting. I want to get your view. And once it's out on the table, it's like I learned this from my husband, who says, you put things out on the table and then you say, okay, now that I've said it, how do we move forward? How do we make this work? And you make it immediately a positive conversation, constructive one. But if you wait too long, then you're going to have the conversation, well, like this has been going on forever. And there is no room for how do we turn this around?
Yeah, and most leaders, not most, that's a really bad way of saying it. A lot of leaders I've worked with in the past do that. They avoid the conversation to the point where it's too late, like you just said, to have the conversation. We've passed that. And that's no fault of the employee. It's because you didn't want to have that tough conversation. And I've been there, like you said, where you have to have that conversation. And I've learned from mistakes going, if I don't have that now, I'm doing a disservice to them and the organization and myself by not having that conversation.
And I've been there too.
Joshua on LinkedIn asked a really good question. He said, first of all, we said awesome conversation. So thank you, Joshua. And he said, how did your experience from the business side of the organization help you in your role as a CHRO?
Yeah, it's a good question. And actually, I think that I constantly, whenever I implement something or I have an idea or something that new we want to do, or even something that already exists that we want to improve, is I put myself in the on the other end as the employee. How am I going to perceive this? What impact is this going to have on the employee? What difference is it going to make? And same with projects or new things or even communication. So I do have the advantage of having had like communications as background
and sales, right? Because you're selling a lot of what this is what a lot of CHROs in my experience, they're not very good at selling sometimes to their ideas and projects to the business. It's a huge part.
Absolutely, yeah, it is, but it really is about putting yourself in the shoes of the other person and what impact are you going to make. So if, for example, we changed our bonus reward strategy 2 years ago, and then we adjusted it further this year. You always think, okay, what is the impact going to be on the employees, and how are they going to perceive this, and is this positive or negative, and then being honest, because that's what I would want as an employee. Like, don't try to pretend that it's all great. Like, no, you're going to lose out here. We're going to give you back there. It's not the same level, but sometimes, it's a give and take. Sometimes it's a give and give, and sometimes it's just a take.
Yeah.
It's
Because
being
they're gonna find
honest.
out anyway, right? And that's the thing. They're going to find out anyway.
Absolutely.
So if
Yeah.
you're
And
not
they feel it.
transparent,
I mean,
yeah,
they're all adults. They know when you're trying to fool them.
yeah, yeah.
So,
Even again, back to the point, even when it's difficult to have a conversation or share, that's even more reason why you need to over communicate and be transparent, be vulnerable.
mm,
You don't always have the answers, and that's also okay.
mm,
And we're seeing that throughout this whole pandemic with business people. We saw, I think, the Edelman Trust Barometer report to show the employees the first place they look for their advice on COVID and the crisis is their business,
mm.
not the news, not their own government, but their employer
Yeah.
as well. Which is, I was shocked originally when I saw that research, but then I was like, actually, it makes sense.
Mm,
As well, because especially in your organization, you have a global reach.
yeah.
So you actually can say, here's what's happening globally. This is what we're hearing, right? Because
Mm,
we've got employees and offices everywhere in the world. You can give them a varied point of view
mm,
as well. But before we wrap up, Caroline, I'm going to jump into our quick fire round.
mm-hmm.
So you wasn't prepared for this, so I'm going to throw you a curveball. So I'm going to ask you 5 questions,
Okay.
and you're no longer than 30 seconds to give us some amazing answers. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're like, no.
Mhm.
What was the number one thing that was holding you back from becoming a CHRO?
I think initially it was what I said earlier, understanding what you can and cannot do in a role like this. Um, yeah, uh, I think what held me. So that's as an HR leader, as a leader in general, I would say probably holding on to things myself for too long. Like it's my baby,
I'm the
and
same.
I want to deliver it from the beginning until the end. I've
Yeah,
learned over time, to rely on your team, to do like the put the task force, trust your team, and the amount of things you get back is tremendous. It makes you so much more powerful. So I think that was a big step forward when I
What-
understood that.
what's the best piece of business advice you've ever received?
Um, uh, there's a couple. So the first one is always think that people have the best of intentions. So don't get defensive. Um, Another one is use the 3 R's. It's receive, reflect, respond. So analyze before you
Make a
you
rash
you go
decision.
back.
Mhm.
Um, and a third one would be one of my bosses who said, never stop thinking about what's next. So
Yep,
be
very good advice. Yeah,
well,
yeah.
always think ahead, and it's sort of personal and professionally. You got to have like projects on what is next, and that keeps you going.
hmm Fantastic. What's one book, or if there's more than one book, book to recommend to our audience, and why? It doesn't have to be HR related.
Um, I really like the "What Got You Here Won't Get You There," Marshall Goldsmith. Um, Another one that I read recently by Cy Wakeman. What was the title?
I know who you're on about.
Reality-based leadership.
hmm
Sort of like ditch the drama, and I really like that one. And there's one thing in there that really stuck with me, which is the amount of time we spend on underperformers, we should be spending on our top performers. And I'm like, that is so true.
Yeah, because you're like, oh,
It's
they're
so
top
true.
performers, they're fine. We don't have to worry about them. Whereas actually, if we spent more time with those top performers,
Yeah, and
we really
if we yeah, exactly. So that was really
yeah,
useful. And then there is another book that I use quite regularly. It's called FYI, for Your Improvement, and it's a book by Corn Ferry that has like it has a variety of competencies and what they look like if they're used at the right level. What they look like if they're overused or underused, and then it has a lot of ideas and ways to address those. So that's really great tool or a great book when you talk about talent and competencies and people and how some are better than others and why. And so that's a really good book, FYI.
Yeah, cool. Well, you got three there. Everyone, you're spoiling everyone for choice right now. And then, could you share some of the internet resources you use? So in terms of sort of staying up to current events or tools that you use, what social networks? Where do you get your knowledge information from? What's in the
So
browser?
Gartner
Mm-hmm.
is one, LinkedIn for sure, Josh Bersin as well.
Always a good resource.
Yeah. Shrum specifically for like policies and templates and best practices.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, someone's trying to call me.
That's all right.
And yeah, that's
Well, that's already a lot.
those are the and
Yeah.
since recently you as well.
Oh, thank you. I was going to message you off and say, how dare you not message
How
me?
dare you not
I'm only
stalk at me?
joking. I'm only joking. And then what's one thing about, last question, what's one thing about your business that you're in now that you're most excited about?
I think it's the overall opportunity that lies ahead of us. So I think at Itiviti we've got great talent, great team to work with, solid client base, and it's really taking it to the next level that excites me. And I think going through this pandemic has kind of shown the sustainability of the organization. Also, our industry, fintech, has like we've been very, very busy because banks, brokers, dealers have been very busy trading during this entire time. So I think it's what I find exciting is to help going to that next level, get new markets, develop new products, provide new opportunities for the people in the organization as well. And I think the fact that we've been sustainable during this extraordinary crisis is probably also a good thing for our investors and for any future investors. And I think that going forward, probably, the sustainability of a business through a crisis like this one is going to become a key element in choosing whether they invest or not.
Yeah.
So I think, yeah, those are the things. And maybe maybe changing owner one day as well. So,
Yeah, one day, exactly. Well, you made a really good point there. You're definitely looking at, I'm sure people will be looking at the organizations and how they adapted and through this whole thing is going to be a massive question people are going to be asking themselves moving forward. Completely makes sense. Well, look,
yeah,
thank
and
you.
even in attracting and retaining talent as well.
Yeah,
How sustainable are you?
even more, exactly, even more important, because I'm sure in the interview process, that's going to be a question they'll be asking.
Exactly.
If I was interviewing right now, that was one question I'll be asking. How did you, what did you
How
do?
did you
How did
do?
you treat your people through this is going to be a question that so many people are going to be asking coming out of this. And that's really going to define your organization in many ways as well. And if you try, and if you think they're not going to know, trust me, they will. Because social media exists, Glassdoor exists. So yeah. Well, look, thanks so much, Karoline. I appreciate taking the time. It's been over an hour. I can't believe it seems like you kind of time
Wow,
to
yeah.
yeah, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Before we wrap up, if there's sort of one parting piece of advice you give to other leaders considering a jump to over to HR, what would that be? And then
Go
also
for it.
get the best place for people to connect with you online.
Yeah, I would say just go for it. Just if you
do
think
it.
if just do it. Yeah, just go
Let's
for
do
it.
it. We've got like
Just
we're
do
gonna
it.
get like a copyright claim from Nike now after that. And I'm only joking. And then where's the best place for people to connect with you if they want to say hello?
LinkedIn, or yeah, Karoline .Raets@itiviti.com. You can send an email as well. No problem.
You. Well, look, for everyone listening, appreciate you tuning in live on LinkedIn and sticking with us. Thanks so much, Karoline, again. If you're new here, please follow us on LinkedIn so you'll be updated every time we go live. Also, consider following us on the podcast. So if you head over to hrddleaders.com/podcast, you can subscribe to the podcast there. And then very lastly, we've just announced our next CHRO virtual summit, which if you haven't seen, we've just launched now. We're going to have over 50 chief HR officers from across the world joining us for 8 hours to share what they're doing through this pandemic, how they're supporting the organization, and how they're planning to return to office. So if you're not already signed up for that, the link will be in the description for you to do so. Apart from that, enjoy the rest of your day. And if you're still here, I'll be back in an hour with another episode. So we don't stop over here. But I'll let Karoline get back to work. See you later, Karoline.
Thank you.
Yeah,
take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.